Ray, welcome to the stage. Yeah, you get the chair of honor. You're from out of town. Welcome to Phoenix. It's wonderful. We have a wonderful panel, guys, here. It's not just Ray. He's, of course, our special guest from out of town. We have some other wonderful panelists as well. I want to introduce, first, the person who really made this happen here today. We're getting into that story a little bit here. But I want to introduce Nicole Rodriguez to the stage. Yes, everybody. That's right. Nicole Rodriguez is a board member of Urban Phoenix Project. She has a varied background in urban planning, urban forestry, and sustainability. She came to the city of Phoenix, to the Valley, about 20 years ago without a vehicle, experiencing the bus system in the summer heat. She struggled with the economic hardship of vehicle ownership, and for some years now, her and her family have biked, bused, walked just about everywhere. And Nicole has received multiple awards for her community advocacy and serves as the vice chair of the City of Phoenix Encanto Village Planning Committee. Let's give it up for Nicole Rodriguez, the reason we're here today. Next, I want to introduce our other panelist, our final panelist here, Jenn Duff. Jenn is, you might know her if you're from the city of Mesa. Jenn is an elected official. We love an urbanist as elected officials. It's wonderful. As a City Mesa council person, Jenn has achieved an influence that extends beyond the city's limits. As a graduate of Smart Growth America Complete Streets Champion Institute program, she's a major advocate for safe streets in the Valley. She also serves on the City of Mesa Planning and Zoning Board and co-founded the Retail Arts Innovation and Livability Rail Community Development Corporation. She's won multiple awards for her community advocacy, work, and leadership. Let's hear it up for Jenn. Okay, I know everybody gets a wonderful introduction, and last but certainly not least is Ray, the man of the hour we're here to see. Most of you are already familiar with Ray Delahanty, and he's the creator behind CityNerd. On his popular YouTube channel, he explores urbanism, transportation, and all things that make cities unique, with his signature dry sense of humor. The channel's point of view is strongly influenced by his professional background in transportation planning, traffic analysis. Prior to starting his YouTube channel in 2021, Ray had a 15-year career as a planner and project manager for consulting firms and public agencies in Portland, Oregon. Ray, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for braving the heat, coming out to Phoenix. And please give a warm welcome to Ray, the City Nerd. Ray, I'm going to start with you. How is Phoenix, first of all? How you doing? How's been your time in Phoenix? Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, I mean, you might ask why I would come here in late June. I'm kind of asking myself that question right now, honestly. How's the sound? It's good? Working?
Up. You got to put that right sound up to you. Up, up.
Up, check, check. Better?
Check, check.
Better? Should I hold it like right there? No, that's bad. Good enough? Yeah, so, yeah, normally, so I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico, so Phoenix is an easy trip for me to make. So yeah, you might ask why didn't I come here in like November or March or something like that, and there are a couple of reasons. A good opportunity came up for me to come out and do this event and do some filming, but also I kind of wanted, I mean, there are things that are different about every city in the U.S., and you know, one of the things that's very different about Phoenix is it gets hotter here than it really does in any other major city, and it's kind of interesting to observe conditions this time of year and kind of struggle through them myself and see how the city functions. So that's kind of my experience right now, just trying to see how people here survive when it gets up to like high 100s, you know, 108, 109, and just kind of see the way people live, because obviously it's not like that all year long. You get a few months that are tough, and I just kind of wanted to experience that.
So, Ray, I watched your TED Talk about when you were in Vegas, okay? You said you can be an urbanist and live in a Sunbelt city, okay? You now live in Albuquerque, so I gotta ask, when are you moving to Phoenix?
Is that the logical progression?
That's the progression, going bigger. Phoenix is the biggest city in the Southwest.
Yeah.
When are you coming?
That's right. It's something I actually did consider. There were reasons I wanted to be in the Southwest. There are family reasons that I don't want to get into, but there are like retired folks down here that I wanted to be near, so Phoenix could have made sense for that. I did visit Albuquerque while I was living in Las Vegas, and really enjoyed it, and thought there were things I could film there. Cost of living is low. I enjoyed the climate, so I made the move there. But I would never say never about coming to Arizona. So I'm kind of moving around a lot.
Okay. You're saying there's a chance. All right. I like it. We really want to. Oh, I think that's better sound-wise. Yeah, I like it. First of all, thank you so much for coming, and thank you so much for Nicole for putting this together. Nicole, I want to call on you first. Give us just, as we dive into these issues, how did this whole event come about here today? How did you get the CityNerd out here to Phoenix?
Well, first I asked, and it wasn't really a hard sell because I pitched it to Ray. Hey, we got the 7 reverse lanes, and there's 2 reverse lanes that are only like a mile apart. And it was instantly almost, it seemed like you caught on to how crazy this seemed. I'm putting words into your mouth, I know, but it is crazy, right? I mean, so anyway, part of this campaign that we kicked off about last summer, right, Ed? It was about last summer. Yep. It's all about ending the reverse lanes. You can see a sign back there, in the rush hour, reverse lanes. We have yard signs. Oh, and Councilwoman Pastor's here. Woo! Thank you for coming. She wants to get rid of the reverse lanes too. Anyways, so we're trying to do our best. It's a citizen campaign, and we have businesses like this one today, the Royale, that just want this gone. And businesses have been here for the longest time, and we've seen that even though the reverse lanes have been here since the late 70s and early 80s, it still continues to atrophy our community and our neighborhood. So it was a pretty easy sell, I would say, right? I mean, anyways. So that's in a nutshell, ending the reverse lanes. We had a lot of folks like Ed, Teresa of Melrose Pharmacy's here too. We got Pam. Anyways, it's a community effort really to bring this together, and it all happened out of frustration really. So thank you again.
Yeah, and Ray, how many days have you been in Phoenix so far? What's been your take, Phoenix generally, but also the reverse lanes? You do so much content looking nationally at Strodes, at who's doing things well, maybe not so well. What is your thought as somebody coming in who's looking at has a national perspective about our crazy, terrible reverse lanes that we have here on 7th Avenue and 7th Street?
Yeah, when Nicole approached me about this, so keep in mind my background is it's kind of more in traffic engineering. Even though I'm a planner, I ended up kind of doing a lot of engineering work and managing a lot of traffic engineering projects, and so just the operational concept of reverse lanes, which I was aware of, but I just had never lived in a city that had them. That was interesting to me. Now, like I grew up in Seattle, and so we have like the express lanes on I-5, right? There's a completely separate set of lanes that reverses direction. So in the AM, it's inbound to downtown Seattle, and then they shut it down for like an hour and a half or 2 hours in the middle of the day, and they make sure it's clear, and then they reopen it and they change all the signage. It's all got like active signage, and it reverses direction, so it goes outbound from downtown in the PM hours. And just the idea that it just seems so much more informal here, right? It's just some painted lines on the road, and there's some signs overhead that say, "Hey, you could use this at some hours and not others, and then at other hours it works a different way. I'm sure you'll all figure it out," and then it just goes. And so Yeah, needless to say, I've spent. So I got here on Monday, kind of late in the day, so I didn't do much then. But I spent most of Tuesday walking 7th Street and 7th Avenue and just kind of observing how they work and trying to figure out like what the rules are. I think I have to go do a little more research because I'm still not even straight on it. And I think a lot of the drivers are not straight on what the rules are either. Because there's some places, like during reverse hours, like I'm looking at it at, like 8 a.m. when the reverse lane is supposed to be used for inbound travel, and there's at signals, left turns are prohibited at some of the signals, but if there are unsignalized left turns on the side streets, my impression from looking at the signage is that those are permitted, but they're not easy, right? They're not easy, and then if you do it and you have to wait for a gap in traffic, like everybody behind you is just trying to go through. Their perception of that lane is that it's for through traffic, and so they start honking if somebody is trying to take a left, which I think is a legal maneuver, but it's, I don't know. So I have all kinds of questions about it. I literally have to review some of the footage I took and figure out what was going on, because it's kind of a madhouse, honestly.
It is a madhouse. It is like Mad Max out there on the reverse lanes. I have seen cars nose to nose, both drivers honking, laying to their horns, both drivers just as convinced that they're right and they understand how to use the reverse lanes and the other one doesn't, which, to me shows that it's a bad design, right? It's a terrible design. But I want to get Jenn involved here. Jenn, you are actually on the city council in the city of Mesa. You're fighting to make streets safer and better designed. Talk to us about, I know, thankfully, there's no reverse lanes in Mesa, right? Thankfully. Talk to us about your fight on all the activity you've been doing over many, many years to make it better and safer in the city of Mesa.
Yeah. I think we call those reverse lanes. Aren't they also known as suicide lanes? And that's basically what's going on there. Fortunately, we don't have those in Mesa. But due to some federal monies that are available right now, we've been able to apply for a lot of those. We've got a Safe Streets for All grant to do a feasibility study and hopefully an implementation grant to do a center street protected bike lane and roundabout and some street improvements. Big news is for our streetcar. We had the feasibility study for that. And then it was announced yesterday that we got $16 million raise grant to $60 million to do the engineering and environmental. So that is setting us up to get the first phase from the Marina Heights to Dobson Road done, connecting into the Tempe streetcar. And then there'll be further phases going deep into the Dobson Road through the Asian district. How many people are here from Mesa? I don't want to go through all these. Okay.
Yeah, okay,
Cool.
East Valley.
All right. We need to get a movement going on in Mesa. And down along Dobson, then Southern, and then up to Country Club connecting to the light rail. So those are a couple of major projects that are going to transform the area. I represent downtown Mesa. And I'm an urbanist for a very long time, and I am so thrilled to be here. I feel like sometimes I'm an alien. I'm speaking at city council, and no one's understanding the language. And I come over, I'm like, these are my people. I am so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Jenn. It's awesome to have you. If you want to go back to Ray, I'm going to come back to Ray, but it's awesome to have you. A lot of people don't realize, when we're looking at, especially from a national level, Mesa's bigger than like St. Louis. Mesa's bigger than so many other cities and maybe doesn't always get the love. So we appreciate you trying to bring the love to Mesa, make it safer, and make it better. Ray, I want to come back to you. You do so many awesome lists on your YouTube channel. I want to come back to the reverse lanes. And you often talk about stroads. And I think we all know what stroads are, right, guys? Boo. Can I get a boo on stroads? Boo. If you were to make a list of top 10 terrible stroads in the United States, Grand Avenue. Okay, we'll set them down Grand. Where would you rank here the reverse lanes here on 7th Avenue and 7th Street? Are these the worst roads you've ever seen?
Yeah, there's no way. So part of the problem with doing what I do is there's no way for me to actually go visit every possible strode candidate in the whole country and evaluate them. So like what I usually do is just do what I can with like Street View or Google Earth, which is usually like, I don't know, sometimes it could be kind of updated. Sometimes it's like 5 years old, so I have to try to back check it against, I don't know, like recent projects or whatever. Yeah, so where would it rank? I don't know. Like so I think of like the basic definition of a strode, like it's a mashup of, like, it's a portmanteau, right, of street and road. It tries to have the functions of a street and a road at the same time. So they call it kind of like the futon of roadway infrastructure, right? It's trying to be a bed and a couch, and it doesn't do either very well. And so the sevens really are, especially in the reverse lane configurations they really are a demonstration of that, because you think a street is a place with lots of commercial destinations that you might walk to if it was a pleasant way to get to the places you need to go, or if there was a decent amount of dense housing nearby. And the sevens have lots of commercial destinations on them, right? And so they do potentially have that street function, but the very concept of reverse lanes is really oriented around, through travel. It's highway travel, right? They want to get people in the morning. They want to get people in from the north as quickly as possible by kind of ad hoc adding, like, 50% more. It's like two through lanes. They add a third one. It's not even adding 50% more capacity, though. Like it doesn't have the same capacity because the number of people taking left turns out of them, right? And so it doesn't function as well as it should. But again, they're trying to make it function like a highway almost, even though it has all these commercial destinations and driveways on it. And so it really is kind of both sevens are really kind of an unfortunate example of what that is.
And Nicole, you live on 7th Street. You've been part of the fight for quite some time. You actually live almost directly on 7th Street. Could you talk a little bit, and I don't think a lot of people know the history of how the reverse lanes came about, and then maybe how to plug into where we're at right now in the movement to try to make it better. If you could give a little bit of that history and background. And
I hope I get this correct on the dates, but so 7th Avenue was, we actually had reverse lanes, believe it or not. It was, I believe, on Van Buren, but they didn't have the striping. It was like a cone system. I think that was before the 7th Avenue one, which was 1978. It was implemented on 7th Avenue. And at that time, our city council wasn't divided up in districts. It was what they call like at large. And that's where the city council members can be from anywhere in Phoenix. And in the late 70s, at least, they were primarily North Phoenix, with the exception of one, like in the growing suburb parts of Phoenix. So their idea for them to get out of town quickly was to start turning, because we didn't have the SR 51 yet, was to start turning in some of the major streets into highways, essentially, right? Like we heard Ray say. Parking was removed. There used to be street parking on, I know for sure on 7th Street, I'm sure on 7th Avenue. But once it went in on 7th Avenue, they began to see, Phoenix began to see a drastic increase in collisions, right? The city engineer, and this is in the news, back in 1979, they said, let's now do 7th Street. City council did. City engineer urged them against doing that, actually. And guess what the favorite thing that we always hear that comes up? Just let's do enforcement and education. And now we see, how well that's been working for how many years they've been there? It's the continuous narrative we continue to hear from council members, from higher ups in the city. And even if you go on the toxicnextdoor.com, which I don't know why you would, you should be on Discord and Strong Towns. But anyways, you'll hear that kind of like, learn the drive, or we need more, enforcement out there. No, I mean, even if you want enforcement out there, that's such a waste of resources, to be honest, and it's a Band-Aid at most. So Anyway, did that answer the question on the history?
No, that was perfect. That definitely answered the question. And Ray, I want to come back to you. You've been walking 7th, and kudos to you coming out in the heat. What you see businesses, you see homes, you see communities, divided by these reverse lanes and the 7s. If you could imagine it, and have your urbanist wand out there to wave, how would you change 7th Street and 7th Avenue to make it more active, more connected, more robust, more walkable, and better? What would you do different?
Yeah, see, I always struggle with questions like this because of having spent as long as I did in consulting. Like, you would never just come out and say, oh, here's what you should do. You'd have like a huge scope of work and like a 2-year project to study like everything. I don't know, but I mean, for me, like there are a couple issues that I just think need to be solved. One is the access for, because again, there's a lot of commercial along the 7s, right? And so to treat those businesses as if the most important thing is to let people drive by them as quickly as possible without ever seeing them or experiencing them. That's really a terrible message for the businesses that choose to locate on those streets. And then the other thing is just the sidewalks. There are some places where there's been new development. I mean, obviously the city has code that requires when there's new development, they have to, at least I assume, this is what I assume from walking, but if there's new development, they need to dedicate additional right-of-way to set the sidewalks back and have planter strips. So at least there's some buffer between the sidewalks and the streets. But that's a pretty low proportion of what's out there today, just because so little has been redeveloped. And so you'll have long stretches where you've just got a curb-tight sidewalk, right? There's no buffer between you and traffic that theoretically is moving 30. If it's a Waymo, it's going 35 miles an hour. If it's a human driver, it's not going 35 miles an hour. They're just zipping right by you. And I don't know. Like, I could go on, and it's going to be in a video I do because I did this. But there are locations where you're walking on the sidewalk, and not only is the sidewalk, I think it's probably 6 feet curb tight, but sometimes there's either not a retaining wall, but there's some sort of wall with vegetation growing over it that's growing into the sidewalk, and you literally have to walk into the vegetation or walk, I don't know, like it's a terrible situation to put a pedestrian in. And like, I'm sure a lot of people would say, well, why are you trying to walk out there anyway? And I think that's really the wrong question to ask. I mean, those should be, these are like important parts of the city that are close in, where lots of people live and there are lots of businesses. They should be walkable. So those are the first things that kind of inform my idea of what I would want it to look like. And I would just say, like, the configuration is strange on both of them because it's like 3 lanes northbound and 2 lanes southbound with a center turn lane. Like, I never see that. That's so strange. So I don't know. I feel like a lot of times you're looking at like a 5-lane arterial or a 7-lane arterial and think, oh, to do a road diet, you have to take away 2 lanes. Here, you could really take away 1 and just have 2 in each direction in a center turn lane. It's not my ideal, but that would be a vast improvement. That's my first idea. And, whether that's for, bike lanes, I don't know if that's really probably the best use. I think you really need more space for pedestrians.
We got a lot of work to do here in Phoenix. You mentioned Waymo, Ray. What have you been in a Waymo yet? You're coming from Albuquerque, where I don't think they have them yet. Here, they seem ubiquitous. What's your take on the Waymo and kind of maybe the impact of automated vehicles on kind of the urban landscape going forward? What do you think?
It's funny because in my previous career, I was told for years and years that autonomous vehicles were right around the corner and all the cars were going to be driverless, and it just kind of never, I was told, yeah, that'll all be in place by like 2020. This was probably back in like 2013 or something like that. And the horizon just kind of kept pushing out and getting pushed out further and further because there were so many, not really technical problems, but I just think unanticipated issues that kept coming up. To actually see it in operation here in Phoenix is kind of eye-opening, because I think I had heard about it, but I wasn't aware of how ubiquitous it was until I got here. And so, yeah, of course, like I took one here tonight. I took a couple on Tuesday, I think. Yeah, because, well, I mean, obviously it's great for content. So there's definitely gonna be some Waymo content in one video or another. I still haven't, like, I don't think I've ever had a visit to a city where I had so many different things I think I wanted to talk about that there's no way I can fit into one video. So there's probably going to be a couple different things on the way, because I just have too many ideas and too much footage. Like, I have to go back and review everything I saw, because there's so much going on with the Waymos. I mean, the first thing that occurs to me is everybody should drive like this. But they don't. Like, the Waymos are out there, and then, you know, if you're on one of these, like, 7-lane roads, and the Waymo will always take a left into the nearest lane, whereas a human driver will just immediately try to go into the farthest lane. It'll go in the nearest lane, but if it has to take a right, it needs to find a way to get over, and so it has to find gaps in traffic in the next lane where the cars are going 10 or 15 miles an hour faster, because they don't go the speed limit. The Waymo is going 35, everybody else is going 45 and 50. So it kind of introduces some weird conflicts that are not the fault of the Waymo at all, right? They're like, it really lays bare how, I don't know, like how flawed the transportation system is when it's built around human drivers who, I don't know, like, they just don't follow the laws at all. Like, kind of understandably, because they don't get enforced, right? But so it raises all kinds of super interesting questions. And then the way the technology works and what it senses. Like, I saw it sense all kinds of things, because you can see it on the display. You can say, oh yeah, it sees like all of those pedestrians and bicyclists. So so I only have like a limited experience with it, but it's super interesting, and I don't think there's any other city where I can see that in operation, right? Is that right? I don't think so.
San Francisco? San Francisco, apparently.
Really?
As well, maybe certain parts of San Francisco, but
okay.
Yeah, I mean, this is, I'm told that this is the only place you can take a Waymo to an airport. So maybe, yeah, I think so. What was that, Jen?
I believe they stopped allowing it to the airport. They just take it to the 44th Street station, right?
SkyTrain. Speaking of trains, Ray, you're from Albuquerque now. Have you taken there's always a lot of discussion about a commuter train going from downtown Phoenix to downtown Tucson. How does that sound, guys? That sound good? I think so too. So, have you taken the Roadrunner from Albuquerque to Santa Fe? What's it like? And what do you think about maybe trying to replicate that on a larger scale with a train from downtown Phoenix to downtown Tucson, which are kind of somewhat comparable in distance and from big city to not as big of a city?
Yeah, I've definitely thought about this. And I've taken the Rail Runner several times because I like Santa Fe, but I can't afford Santa Fe. I don't know if I would live there anyway, but it's a much more expensive city than Albuquerque. But it's a lot of fun to visit. It's extremely historical and charming, and they have a lot of interesting like cultural attractions up there. So there's lots of good reasons to go up there. I think it also functions, unfortunately, I guess. It is a bit of a commuter service. Like, there are wealthy people who live in Santa Fe and commute to their jobs in Albuquerque, and there are a lot of service workers who live in Albuquerque and commute up to because there's a huge restaurant scene in Santa Fe, and the people who work in the restaurants can't really afford to live in Santa Fe for the most part. So you do get this two-way dynamic. The train, it runs more often on weekdays. I think it runs 8 times a day, each direction on weekdays, a little less often on Saturdays and Sundays, but it's a great service. You can just walk on. I show up like 15 minutes early because I'm an idiot, I guess. But the locals, I don't even consider myself a local. But the locals will tend to show up like 5 minutes beforehand, right? Because it runs on time. They'll show up 5 minutes before, and then you just walk on, you sit down, and then a conductor comes by and like sells you a ticket, and you can tap pay for it. So it's extremely convenient to use. As far as so Phoenix to Tucson, it's a little further, but the cities are much larger, right? Because Albuquerque is like 1 million, and Santa Fe is like a couple 100,000. So like Phoenix, Tucson, we're talking like 5 times this. Each of them it's like 5 million to 1 million or something like that, right? So much higher demand. I don't know if you would get the same commute dynamics, but just the sizes of the cities alone, you would think would make a service like that kind of a no-brainer.
Absolutely. Let's try to get that train going, you guys. How about that? Yeah. Jenn, speaking of trains, Jenn, I want to talk to you about the light rail. Anybody take the light rail here today? Yeah, right on. Me too. I saw a few people on there. Jenn, you oversaw and are a part of the light rail expansion through your district in the city of Mesa. Talk about what the light rail has done for downtown Mesa and what that kind of public transit can do further for your area of Mesa.
It has absolutely transformed downtown Mesa, but it wasn't it by itself. It took a lot of steps. We had the light rail. Downtown Mesa was the US 60 at some point went down Main Street. Then in about 1980, the US 60 moved south. Of course, the usual story of a downtown, the major highway, the major thoroughfare moves away, and then it goes depressed. And it's depressed like 40 years. So getting the light rail extension into Mesa was huge, and everybody thought, this is it. This is going to be it. But it takes a little while, and we did a lot of nurturing for the businesses. We opened, 2015, we opened it into the country club, and then I think it was like 2019, it went all the way to Gilbert Road. But since then, we've experienced near $1 billion in investment. Our downtown is blossoming, it's robust. We're able to achieve attracting ASU Mix, which is immersive media experiences, high-tech AR, VR, gaming, film, all those kinds of things. And we're building upon that to do some more schools with ASU. But also, our planning department, our city management was wise enough to employ a downtown transformation office, which started with one person, and he implemented the form-based code. And so that started creating a lot of interest for development, because now you don't have to go through zoning for everything, and it's just more on form and use rather than on, is it commercial or whatever. And that office now has grown to, I think about 6 or 7 people. And they're doing a huge amount of work. And now we've added on 2 more people to do the redevelopment areas west of downtown, and some infill between that and the Asian district. So it's been huge. Now, constituents in Mesa, there's a large, you hear this, it brings the homeless, it brings the crime, blah, 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 blah. There's no statistics about that, and it's from people who don't even write it. So we are expanding to the streetcar and doing more work ahead. So thankfully, we don't get too wrapped up in the nonsense and are working on these transit items. In downtown, we're also, I'm going to brag about downtown because it's what I represent, and I'm so proud of some of the work that's going on, because there's some issues too outside of downtown. We are employing Jeff Speck to do a micromobility study for downtown.
Woo woo, micromobility.
So yeah, I'm so thrilled to have him to look at our downtown and how we get around, because there were some things done when ASU come. They said, they need some more parking, and we put some parking spaces down the middle of a street. and there's no place to bike. Anyway, so we're just to look at how we can get around downtown and microtransit And because we are also doing a MOU, which should be bringing to council in September for cul-de-sac. We will have a cul-de-sac. So, of course, cul-de-sac is about minimum cars. And so we're looking at what would it look like to have an autonomous shuttle in downtown just within the square mile, just to get people from one edge or one corner over to the other, so we don't think about, I mean, you can bike it, but we need some other forms and some other options. That's not there. I'm putting it out there, but we're not there yet. But cul-de-sac is definitely on board with that, so hopefully we'll get there. We did Eco Mesa, and we took a parking lot on the backside of Main Street, and they built over it, and so retained the parking, but then there's a level of parking for the residents, and then 7 floors of apartments, and we're engaging in an MOU in a couple of weeks for another version in downtown. So all these things have really, it started from the light rail, but getting into that form-based code, and we don't have parking minimums. We realize in downtown, in the form-based code area. But to centralize our parking and looking where the garages are, and we've just purchased a garage to centralize it and do the micromobility. So.
Awesome. That's awesome. Keep up the good work. You talking about the light rail. Ray, have you had a chance to ride our light rail here in Phoenix? What's been your experience? How have you liked it? Are we going to see some light rail content in the future here? Who wants to see some light rail content? Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, so part of my thing when I visit a city, like I try to do everything car free. Now I make an exception for robot taxis because they're kind of cool. I don't know if they're cool actually. I have to think about it. But yeah, I mean, I definitely I took the light rail from 44th when I flew in, and I've been taking it to get back and forth for the most part. Although I've been doing a lot of walking, which I don't know if is totally advisable in the weather conditions, but I don't know how else to get the footage I need for the videos. So hydration always. But yeah, like I took. I was kind of surprised. No, maybe it might be that the Diamondbacks game got out at a certain point, but I took the train. I was in Tempe late yesterday, and then I was downtown, and I think I got on the train around, I don't know, 9 or 9:30 p.m., and I was kind of expecting it to be sort of like a dead zone, right? It was crowded. There weren't too many people wearing like baseball jerseys or whatever, so I think it was just busy. I mean, I think they reduced the frequencies at a certain point. Like I think it's only running like every 20 at that point, so maybe the trains get a little bit more crowded. But I was pretty, I don't know, like I think I was pleasantly surprised by the ridership that I've seen most of the time I've taken the train. Like because what do you think as someone coming from outside of Phoenix? Think, oh, that's a place where people don't take transit, everybody drives, and clearly there are a lot of folks who have taken to the light rail, and so that's encouraging for the expansion plans, and I don't know, like it probably contributes to the viability of denser development around the stations, which is what you're seeing. So my impression is pretty positive, honestly. Awesome.
Looking forward to that light rail content. Nicole, you've been a huge advocate for both the light rail, public transit, busing. Talk a little bit about your advocacy work for the light rail and transit, and really what we could be doing better in Phoenix. Ray is our guest here in Phoenix. He's very kind and positive, but we have a lot of work to do in Phoenix, frankly.
Are you saying I'm not positive?
No, you are very positive. You are very positive. But you always give it straight. And so what tell us about your work and what we could be doing better when it comes to the light rail and public transit here in Phoenix.
So I'm going to back up just a little bit. On the advocacy side, I see a lot of folks here, and I'm actually eager to know everyone's story if it is possible. And it's been fun getting to know the Strongtown guys. They're the most humble people I've met in a long time on urbanism. But the way I actually got involved, I want to mention real quick on this, is in Minneapolis, when I think it was the Sierra Club was coming after the city for the density that they passed a handful of years ago, And it was the environmentalists that were going after it for reasons that were pretty asinine. But my background isn't environmental. My very first exposure to what really was the impetus for me to want to go into urbanism, because I really never wanted to live in a city after, because I'm from Southeast Houston. Grew up in Southeast Houston by the refineries, the bayous. I did bike and took the metro bus. But that exposure, it made me wanting to be out in nature more. So I actually, believe it or not, worked up in Maine. I was on the Appalachian Trail as one of the ridge runners in the most northern terminus area with all the through hikers. Did that for a while, did some other kind of nature gigs. But then I went over to Europe also. And it was so liberating because I was doing everything on my own budget and I didn't have much of a budget. I was able to get around in so many places and maybe eat one meal a day, but that was fine. But it was the train system and just walking and how accessible everything was. So I knew after that, it's like, my God, if I go back to the States, because I really wanted to stay. I was in Italy for a while. I can't go back to Houston. And this is me like 25 years ago. I can't go back to Houston. I can't get anywhere without someone having to babysit me and drive me around or rely on the sucky metro at the time, which has gotten better a little. Anyways, long story short, it was kind of those exposures and hardships that led me to part of what maybe seems to some people I could be very crass about some of these topics. And so when it comes to the light rail, or recently we're talking about homeless, I want to bring this up. City of Phoenix recently passed an ordinance to keep homeless people away from 500 feet away from camping, from parks. Schools is one of them. I forget the other thing, because of concerns of safety, right? If you're out, thank you. So, I mean, yeah, my sentiments exactly. It was a unanimous vote too. So I'm glad Pastor's gone now. Anyway, so if you're out there walking and you're saying hello, which I guess it's being a Texan, I'm always waving, even on my bike, and maybe it's the fingers sometimes, but a lot of times I'm trying to be friendly and wave to people. Thanks for not running me over. No, we don't have to do that, right? But it's just, I think a lot of times people want that communication, that sense of community. Also, when I'm walking around, I'm doing that. Most of the people who say hello back to me are the unhoused. I almost rarely ever get it from people who are going to work or on a mission to somewhere. It looks like maybe obviously they're not unhoused. They're the most friendly folks out there, even on the light rail. So if people have concerns about the light rail bringing in homeless, I'm like, good. If that's really your perspective, because let me tell you how my experience is with those folks compared to maybe your kind. So I get really defensive about a lot of times when we have these city officials and people show up, it's the smallest crowd that has the largest voice, these NIMBYs oftentimes, that will go and shoot down anyone that's different. So one of the biggest things that we really need help is we need a lot more people getting engaged, not just on the reverse lanes. And maybe you're not into public speaking, which I wasn't, and it's not a fun thing for me to do. I actually hate doing it. Believe it or not, I'm up here. But it's one of those things where it could be as simple as just maybe changing something simple in your life or talking to family members about it on urbanism. But as far as on the light rail, Ed and I and others have actually been struggling quite a bit on this extension, the CapEx extension. And no other extension of the light rail has 5 lanes next to it as a proposal.
It's got,
vehicle lanes.
Vehicle lanes has got 6 to 10 vehicle lanes total in both directions. One direction is from 3 to 5 vehicle lanes. And the traffic counts, there's not that many cars on it.
No,
either.
Yeah, not today. Yeah, so I mean, the reasoning that they came up with was like, well, the ball games, right? Because no one goes that way after the ball games. They're going to the I-10. But anyway, it's like the SR-51 is what they want next to the light rail. So it's been a huge struggle, and we definitely need more people joining in on that cause, because some of the most creative stories we've heard from staff I haven't heard in many years coming from Phoenix. It's actually been a surprise, some of the rhetoric they've been sharing with us, whether it's like, oh, NEPA, the Environmental Protection Act, and having to assess that keeps us, we do have to have more lanes because of NEPA. No, NEPA actually wants you to reduce lanes. It means crazy stuff like that. And kind of the same with the whole parking thing, keeping it brief real too. We kind of flunked on our parking reform last year, and Ed and others were also a big part of that. The small minority of NIMBYs that came out won against us, even though we had 20 plus people show up at the Planning Commission supporting parking reform. And it was a pretty conservative parking reform measure compared to, if you know, the ITE and their steps for recommendations on parking reform. And we even made it more conservative than that. They're already pretty conservative. So really, to answer that question, my main goal is I hope that after this, more folks join Strong Towns and Urban Phoenix Project, or even Rail CDC out in Mesa is another good organization that does great things, because we're kind of a small group, but we do get a lot done. We just need way more people power, a lot more than we have right now. So thank you. I hope I answered that. Right?
You did, and then
tangent.
some. That was awesome. Thank you so much for all of your work. It's amazing, and the people power are here. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about, no pun intended, talk about bicycles. Anybody ride a bicycle here today? Go bikes? Yeah, that's right on. Yeah, big thank you to, first of all, to Jamie, to Phoenix spokespeople for setting up and doing the bike valet. My bike's out there too. Awesome work, awesome content. Jamie Trufin is also putting out wonderful local Phoenix content about urbanism. Please give him a follow on social media and all of that. He's our own local content creator. We love him. But what's been Ray, have you been able to do any biking while you're out here in Phoenix? And if not, what's generally your thoughts and observations here in Phoenix about our biking infrastructure, maybe, and where we could improve on the biking infrastructure out here?
Yeah, I haven't biked at all here. I don't know. Like I often do when I visit another city. Like somebody will lend me a bike and that'll be part of my agenda. And here, like I definitely wanted to spend a lot of time on the sevens, and I couldn't see myself doing anything very effective on the sevens with a bike for reasons that I think are self-evident. So I didn't do any biking for that. Later on, I did. I walked. Was at 3rd Avenue. The two-way protected bike lanes. So there's some good infrastructure in places. I think the big struggle is because in Albuquerque, where I live now, and in Portland, where I lived most of my adult life, you've got a pretty fine-grained grid of neighborhood streets, which often make for good, like what you might call bike boulevards or neighborhood greenways. So like low-stress bikeways that are off of the arterials, right? And that's almost impossible in Phoenix or close to it, just because other than the main arterial, like if you're on 7th, then it's really kind of like 3rd, Central, 3rd, 7th. Like what happened to 1, 2, 4, 5, 6? Like that kind of exists, but they're very disconnected, right? And so it's really hard to make a low stress bikeway network, which I think is kind of a, I don't know. Those aren't perfect because you do like to be where the destinations are, which is often on the arterial roadways. But they are a great way to get around, and that's the way I would usually get around Albuquerque today and Portland when I was biking there. And so I think that's a big struggle. And so I don't know what the city's done as far as like are there low stress routes that can be identified? Like I don't even know if there are. And so I guess it goes back to, okay, so then what's the treatment on some of the busier arterial streets? And so you've got some infrastructure on the 3s, right? But it's kind of a mixed bag from what I could tell.
Yeah, that's accurate. I ride every day, and it's a mixed bag, and every once in a while a flipped off, person in a car getting angry, and we got a lot of work to do. But there's a lot of work that is happening with Urban Phoenix Project, with Strong Towns, trying to get 3rd Street bike lane done all the way through downtown. Who wants to see a 3rd Street bike lane? Yes, all the way through. Now is the time. The city, there are forces out there that don't want it to happen, but we outnumber them, guys. We outnumber them. This event here is sold out today. That's how much excitement there is around these. It's so fun to see the folks inside, and it's cool. There's a debate going on, I guess, inside. But to see the people power out here that's actually way more than what's even coming in here in kind of a political event. There's people coming in from all stripes to support things like this here today. I want to open it up. Speaking of people power, I want to open it up to some questions from you guys. I want to walk around and have some questions for Ray and if you and our other panelists too, if you'd like. I'm going to start over here with our arch enemy. Introduce yourself and go ahead and ask your question.
So my name is Daniel. I just wanted to make a comment. The problem with biking in this town is that cycling is seen as a hobby. So you can get 40, 50, 60 miles on a bike in this town without ever touching a road that cars are on because of our green belts, our canals, things like that. But the issue is that because it's seen as a hobby, it's assumed everyone's going to drive their bike to a parking lot that's on a canal or on a green belt, go on a recreational ride, go back to their car. And so the problem is just the first and last mile to where you go. If you have to go 30 miles on a bike, you're screwed for a mile or two until you get to a canal or a green belt. And then you can go for 25, 26 miles, and then you're screwed for the last mile to your place. So that's, I think, the issue you were just talking about biking is that it's just purely recreational in this town. And so there's a lot of thought put into recreational infrastructure, but just how do you get that last mile without going down 7th Street and dying?
100%. Give it up. 100%. I work downtown Phoenix. I hear that from my coworkers every day. I would bike if I could make it the last mile. And even in how dense downtown Phoenix is, there's not much at all good bike infrastructure. Anybody else want to comment from our lovely panelists on that? I know it wasn't a question here. Yeah. Jen, go ahead.
My philosophy on that, and I get that because I'm always like, no, biking is a form of transportation, is that the people who are making the decisions aren't riding a bike. So they only see their experience of riding a bike, which is on the weekends with the family. And then I'm just like, well, bring the family on down to this road and have a nice ride. And they're just like, no, it's not safe. Yeah, and I really have come off of advocating for bike lanes on arterials. Our arterials are 45 miles an hour, and I'm looking at those stroads, those ones that are kind of the half mile in between, and pulling those down and getting protected bike lanes to get the north, south, and east, west. But it's a challenge. It's definitely a challenge, and I just recently debated this. Had a breakdown at city council. I didn't have it there, but walking away, I just went in my car and cried. To have this debate over a protected bike lane on a road, yeah.
Ray, do you want to, or Ray or Nicole, you want to touch on that?
A lot of times, and I think this happens with everyone who rides a bike, we're seen as people who must not have better things to do, even if we're going to work, because it's seen as, oh, you have extra time. I'm in a vehicle, I'm in a hurry. I must be more important. I'm in a vehicle, I'm trying to get someplace fast, and you're just kind of, in a way, it does look leisure, even when you're on your way, in your tie, in your business suit, going to court. He's a lawyer.
I had a jury trial today at federal court and rode my bike down there.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
It was so much fun. And you know what? It looks like it's leisure because biking is fun, you guys. Biking rocks.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, and the last thing I just wanted to say is e-bikes too. One of the things that is great about e-bikes for Phoenix, even though they haven't been around for the longest time, is how liberating it is to get around in the extreme heat with them, especially for youth as well. And that's something we're working on, is to reduce the age to allow even junior high kids who could fit on a large, the e-bikes tend to be adult size, most of them, for them to have that alternative to get around, right? And a lot of people say that's cheating. Well, I'm sorry, but driving is cheating if we're being honest, right? So anyways, that's all. That's my 2 cents on biking. I could go on about it, but.
Right on. I thought I saw a couple other hands over here. Get in here. Oh, a lot of excitement. We're going to go here first and then over here.
Just as a watcher of your videos, did you get to see any Phoenix Rising games?
No. Did they play it in the last few days? I don't know.
On the 22nd, they had a
Yeah, I would have missed that. So, but yeah, USL championship, right?
Yeah, that's right. The question was any Phoenix Rising games, right? Right off the light rail, they moved on Washington, so very light railable. Little warm, but totally doable if you came out here in Phoenix. All right. Yeah. Heck yeah. Go Rising champions.
Hello, I'm a big fan of the show. Phoenix has empty lots and rising rents and somewhat of a housing shortage. Is there some magic formula to where there's this empty lot and sometimes you see these two-story houses with no lawns because they're maximizing what can go, or just a four-story condo or two-story things with over a garage? When they're doing infill, is there some, do you research like this is the density we should go for? Well, this half of the street is residential. Is there a certain sweet spot that a neighborhood absorbs or should aim for when it comes to density?
Yeah, I mean that's a tricky question, and I mean not to cop out, but I'll cop out because it really does depend. I mean, there's kind of two sides to it. There's what the city code requires, right? So does it have mandatory parking minimums? What setbacks does it require? What's the maximum allowed zoning? So there's kind of the public sector piece of that, and then there's another there's like a private sector piece of it, which is there's somebody whose money is at stake in doing a development, and they have to figure out what pencils out, what they think they're going to be able to rent it for, how much it's going to cost to build. So that it really depends on I don't know. It's very dynamic and complicated. So it's what's allowed or what's required by the city, and then what the developer thinks they can build to like maximize how much money they can make off of it, which might depend on, unfortunately, like are there comps, like are there comparable properties in the area? And sometimes there aren't. Sometimes they would have to be the first ones to do it, right? Which is not a comfortable position for they'd rather have something that's got more certainty behind it, or if they have investors, the investors want to see, oh, has somebody else done what you're talking about? And if there aren't other examples nearby, then it gets that much harder to get the funding for it. So it really varies from place to place, depending on what the local city code is and what kind of development is in place already. I would say like at certain parts, particularly along the light rail line, I mean, there's a lot of new development going in, so there isn't the issue of, oh, what's going to pencil out here? What's actually going to rent out? They can at least figure that piece out. But I think for a lot of neighborhoods in Phoenix, it's probably a lot tougher than that because you've got a certain development pattern that's kind of like your legacy development pattern. So if you want to build something different, it's hard to do it because there aren't comparable projects out there.
That was I would say only a partial cop out of an answer. That was a great answer, I thought. All right, we got a question over here. Can they come up here?
Hey y'all, huge fans of all three of you. Been following the two ladies the longest though. Sorry, Ray. No, this is all great conversations, whether it be making room for bikeways or making room for housing. Ray, as a planner who's done a lot of traffic engineering type of work, can you help expose people to this idea of a traffic impact analysis and the poison pill that it is beyond the zoning code for what holds us back? And is there any sort of communication devices that you have to help humanize the impacts of a traffic impact analysis so that we can communicate that to political leaders and community leaders so that they understand how the capacity of our roadways and the delay of our roadways are ultimately holding us back, assuming that everybody gets around by car?
Yeah, that's a pretty good question because I think the power that the traffic impact analyses have is not well understood by a lot of folks. And so, yeah, as a consultant, I did I both did or managed traffic impact analyses. We didn't do a whole lot of that though, because we mostly had public sector clients. But what we did more often was we reviewed traffic impact analyses that were submitted to a city. We usually had like an on-call contract with a small city. Said, hey, we don't have the staff to review or understand this TIA. Can you look at it and make sure? And just to back up, like, what it is like it's a developer proposes a project. It's got a certain number of units in it. It's got a certain amount of parking. It's got a certain type of land use or mix of land uses. They have to go do some analysis and figure out how much traffic it generates and how that's going to impact like nearby intersections and the level of service. And if it impacts them to a certain threshold, then they're on the hook to either pay a fee, or sometimes if it's a big enough project, they literally have to go in and put a signal somewhere, right? Because it's been decided that, no, we need to maintain a certain level of service. So there's a lot more to it. They could be multimodal impact analyses too, but often it's all about traffic capacity, right? And so as a consultant who reviewed TIAs that were submitted by, I think, less ethical consultants who used terrible methodology. I mean, developers will always kind of they'll try to get what they can, right? And so they might understate impact or come up with the wrong mitigations or no mitigations. So yeah, a lot of what you see in the built environment, particularly around new developments, those are things that come out of these traffic impact analyses where they come up with quote unquote mitigations to the impacts they're having. So if you see an additional right turn lane being put in, or a driveway being put in a weird place, or like a new signal, it usually came out of a TIA. And so I think not just like the general public, but I think for elected officials, just to make sure they understand why the TIAs that they're getting turn out the way they do and result in the outcomes they do, I think is really important. And so, yeah, I don't have like a blanket way to explain it, because TIAs and requirements vary from city to city. But I do think it's an important thing that staff and elected officials and people who serve on like planning commissions, et cetera, they should understand those things really well and understand where their TIA guidelines or requirements are falling short.
Awesome. Nicole, did you want to touch on that? Go ahead.
Because the explanation of it can get really dry on a lot of these topics, but so I brought some books today. Probably a lot of you have heard of Killed by a Traffic Engineer by Wes Marshall. He's based out of Colorado. My family and I, we've been reading this. It has some dark humor in it, because when it's depressing, you got to have some kind of humor in it. But yes, it's depressing. It's written by a traffic engineer, but what Ray was talking about, it does get into the nitty-gritty of some of this and also helps educate. It's put in layman terms, so it's great for that. And really quick, too, sometimes when I bring up this book, people think I'm talking about a video game. It's Street Fight. That's another one I wanted to talk about, where she also goes into talking about some of the standards that Ray's referring to and the evolution of it, and how it's really just killed our cities and made them more of highways rather than neighborhoods. Our streets should be cultural centers. She gets a lot into that and the stories of what they did in New York City when Bloomberg was a mayor. Some really revolutionary stuff. But lastly, the best one, and UPP doesn't know this yet, but Angie Schmidt might be coming to Phoenix, and she's the author of Right Away, and this book opens up talking about Phoenix, about pedestrian incident on 43rd Avenue, an area where it's been hugely divested for a long time. So, and also in this book, it gets all into the whole like science. Well, excuse me, it's not even science, right, Ray? I mean, okay, it's not. But I mean, but a lot of this is just how things were developed when the auto industry took over our lives in the 20s and 30s and came up with these standards, but not really based on anything scientific. So it's kind of neat. You learned about the history in here as well. But these are the three I would love to recommend, because they all get into the nitty-gritty on some level on traffic engineering, and they keep it interesting. So anyways, that's what I wanted to add.
Awesome, awesome. And I saw a hand over here, a couple of hands over here.
So he talked about how most council men and women think that biking is a hobby. And I remember when parking reform was being passed, I think it was Councilman Waring who said that there's not enough parking in downtown, and what's the problem with more parking? So what are some of the ways that you can educate councilmen and women and elected officials?
He's a lost cause.
But maybe Jen's probably.
That's why I invited Jen. So I want Jen to speak on this.
Yeah,
so thank you.
What's powerful to get through to our council people?
I'm still working on that for a very long time because it all makes sense. The value of that parking space is like $20,000 or $30,000. This is like affordable housing, free housing for your car. There is no revenue from this, and we're building our parking lots for Black Friday everywhere, right? And not right sizing. There's just so many. I don't even have a good solution. I just keep on talking this urbanist stuff and hoping that someone else gets it and shows up to council and furthers the conversation.
Any other thoughts? I would say numbers, guys. You cannot deny the numbers. When you show up in force, whether it be comments online like the CapEx extension, we say, hey, we want true multimodal, we want protected bike lanes, we want walkability. Numbers is what talks. We still live in a democracy, so it is numbers. That's my little tidbit here. I got a question here, then I'm going to come over to you.
So my question is about bus rapid transit, also known as BRT. So to my understanding, there's plans for BRT on 35th Avenue, for example, and some other corridors as well. The only problem is it's going to take a long time for that to even be completed. They haven't even started. So my question for you, Ray, is why can't they just paint bus-only lanes today? And not only there, but all around Phoenix. I'm not even aware of there being any of those red lanes anywhere in Phoenix. So obviously BRT is where we want. That's the best option. But are painting bus lanes really, like, is that really that bad in comparison?
Yeah, it's different. I mean, if you ask like a BRT purist, say you have to. I mean, I made a video about the Albuquerque system, and you need all these specific elements related to the stations and stop spacing and all that. But when I was in Portland, like I consulted on, they called it, well, it morphed over time, but it was called the Red Lanes, or no, the Rose Lanes, because the Rose City, right? And so they called it the Rose Lanes Project, and the idea was to use. So your buses all have like GPS on them and passenger counters. So you can do an analysis that shows where buses are slowing down and where they're carrying the most passengers. So you can you can create a metric which shows where the locations on your bus network are having the most impact on the traveling public, right? Because of how many people are on the bus and how much it's getting slowed down. And so we were able to use all that data to identify the segments where the buses were getting caught up in traffic and causing the most like aggregate delay to the passengers, and those became the places that the city, working with the transit agency, was able to target for Rose lanes. And not all of them got the Rose lane treatment because you have to go in and do some analysis and say, oh, we're going to have some unintended consequences. But I think in most cases they were like, yeah, we can take away a lane here and figure out how to make the signal work. I mean, it's more complicated than just painting lanes, right? Because the signals might work differently, right turns might work differently, access to driveways might work differently. So you have to be a little more thoughtful about it. But yeah, it's once you make the decision, there's not that much more to it than going out and painting the lanes red and putting the bus only stencil down. But there is some additional analysis, but not nearly the lead time that you need to actually implement bus rapid transit.
You know, I just wanted to add on. I just had a thought about parking, and a thing that really hit home for me is, I don't know if you know Joe Minicozy and Urban 3. They do data analysis on sales tax, property tax. I know Strong Towns is diving into a lot of this, so you can look at your city. But if you show how much revenue is generated for an area, and you can say, oh, there's a parking lot, because there's nothing. There's nothing for property tax. It has no value as far as any property tax, and of course, no sales tax revenue. It is like dead weight in your city, so that might be another way.
Good one, good one. We have a question right here, really eager question.
It's more of a comment. So back to the elected officials. I'm the vice president of the Tempe Bicycle Action Group, and when it was time for the city council elections in the spring this year, we offered to do a candidate ride with each of the candidates, and 4 out of 5 of them agreed to it. So we led a ride around Tempe, and so they got to see some of the bike infrastructure that they wouldn't usually get to see because most of them drive to City Hall. So that could be something in Phoenix or in Mesa or wherever you are.
Awesome idea. Great idea. That's awesome. Okay, I got a question in the back over here.
Hello, my name is Jacob, and I'm actually a very recent fan, so it's cool to get to see you. I am sure you can attest to your personal experiences that it's very hot here in Phoenix, and that presents a lot of health risks to people, maybe being outside, waiting at bus stops and stuff like that. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on trying to develop more pedestrian and transit-friendly infrastructure while at the same time, trying to alleviate those health risks. Like, have you seen anything in your travels that you think is a really good idea to help with that? Or I don't know, that's just a problem that I personally, I hate waiting at the bus stop because of that, but I don't know if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of times with the issues you have, if you look around, you can find cities that have already solved the problem. And so, in LA, they have La Sombrita. They totally solved it. They got the little shades over the top of the bus stop. I'm kidding. That was my dry humor. Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to notice just walking around most streets, the ones that have been redeveloped more recently and that have, oh, by the way, like in a lot of cities you go to, they hate tall buildings because they cast shadows. I think it's pretty good here. I think it's kind of a plus. So that's nice. But also, some of the, I'm not an arborist. Nicole can probably talk to this a little more than I can. So there probably aren't quite the variety of shade trees that you can grow in Phoenix. This is an issue. I went to Miami last year, actually in July, which was also a terrible idea. And it's a similar thing. The more affluent areas of town have lots of shade trees in their planting strips and in their yards and stuff, and then the less affluent areas, they're just, they're big heat sinks, right? They're just significantly hotter than other parts of the city. So, yeah, I mean, plant more trees. I think that's the number. I mean, it's got so many benefits, right? Not just the shade, yes. But and maybe easier said than done. But I think that's number one.
We're coming to you on this one, Nicole. Nicole is the arborist. I've been working on this issue probably more than anyone maybe in the whole city. Nicole, please.
Maybe. Fun fact, did you know that a palm is a grass and not a tree? Thank you. I'm glad so many people do know that. So palm trees, one of the things I wanted to mention that's kind of a fun but depressing also aspect about the valley is that a lot of palms in Phoenix in the central and historic areas are actually protected. And that, if you think about it, what is that serving? It's the driver experience. It's kind of neat when you realize it, but then you're immediately like, what the F, So those palm trees are there really for the driver experience, that Oasis Boulevard kind of feeling like if you are driving down Central, but if you're on the sidewalk, you're not getting that same perspective, right? So it's just wild to me here in Phoenix that we protect palms in some parts of the city. And one of the things I'm trying to figure out, along with other tree shade advocates, is are those palms going to be included in our tree shade data analysis when they look at the type of shade that's provided throughout the city? Because we know that palms, especially after they're pruned, and they get heavily pruned, provide as much shade as a light pole, if we're being honest. Because before they were included as a tree in the shade data for Phoenix. So that's one of the things we're trying to work on right now too. But another thing too is we have this program called Cool Corridors, where every district gets the same amount of trees along a certain mile length of a street. I'm entirely opposed to that because also Arcadia is getting the same as District 8 in South Phoenix or West Phoenix. All those trees really should be going to the hottest parts of Phoenix. And that's one of the things that we do typically in Phoenix. And that's not equity. I mean, equally distributed, but that's not really equity. And we need our council members to stop trying to ask, or we need to be there influencing that too, but continuously they want an equal piece of the pie. I'm sorry, some of y'all have had way too much for too many years, for one thing. And then, no offense, I heard someone from Desert Valley area, but no offense if you are in the north part of Phoenix, but to be honest, just like with what Councilwoman Duff was talking about, the revenue that's generated from those areas in District 1 and 2 up in north, we are more than subsidizing it here in downtown and central Phoenix and South Phoenix, yet their decisions are impacting us the most. And it's so frustrating and sometimes heartbreaking, especially if you were to go and walk in District 8, South Phoenix and West Phoenix and really see how divested they've been for years. And they have to get grants now just to do what our city has failed to do for them for so long. Anyways, I just wanted to mention that about tree shade. It's one of those points for me.
Right on. We got time for a couple more questions. I see a couple over here.
Hi, my name is Thomas. I have a question, and I also have something to add on to that question that Jacob asked. There's also a big urban heat island effect, obviously, because of all the asphalt. This sidewalk is still hot, and there hasn't been sun for like 2 hours. So that's also a big part. So once we start working on bettering the city, that'll get better. The question I wanted to ask, do all three of you ride bikes regularly? All three of you? Okay. Oh, nice. I have a question just for which one of you three wants to answer. Do you always ride on the bike lane no matter how dangerous it is? Do you ever ride on the sidewalk if it's too dangerous? Like in downtown Mesa, there's some spots where the street will tell you to ride on the road, even though the speed limit is like 35 miles an hour. So just, which one of you wants to answer?
I guess Phoenix specific, but I know you guys are really here to hear Ray, so I'll try to be quick on this. Well, actually, do you guys, so Abby and Derek are our kids, and they actually will bike more than we do oftentimes. Do you ever avoid bike lanes because they feel dangerous and get on the sidewalk? The answer is yes, so it does happen. And it's a shame that it has to feel like you have to be rugged to bike, because that's not how biking should be. It should be for all abilities and really just getting around. And that's what Urban Phoenix Project stands so much for, is for all abilities to be able to get around. But it is common. Ed will take Central too, and Central has a Sharrow, and Sharrows are bullshit.
Can we boo Sharrows? Can we get a boo for Sharrows, guys? They're not a substitute for bike lanes.
And so that Capital Extension area we were just talking about earlier, about the 5 or 20 lanes, whatever it was, next to the new section of the light rail, they proposed a Sharrow, and that's not even industry recommendation anymore. So this shows you how out of touch they are. And to her point about, you got to take your council folks out and biking. Tried that. It's very challenging, but we shouldn't give up, because what she's talking about does have a big impact. But really, sometimes you take certain council members on an outing and they think they know everything. Like, they're so like, oh, yeah, now I know what the whole experience is about. I walked for a mile along a Broadway or whatever. But anyway, yeah, so hopefully that answers your question. And Ray always goes in the Sharrow, I hear.
Not sure about that. Yeah, so I haven't talked about, so I lived in the Las Vegas, Nevada area for a year, and I did bike. I lived in Henderson, which, and for the person who was talking about the trail system, the canal trails, yeah, I mean, it's similar in the Las Vegas area. We have trails along the washes, we have power line trails, we have trails that are aligned along the freeway. And so in Henderson, which is the big southern suburb of Las Vegas, it's pretty well connected once you get on the trail system. But yeah, there's that last mile or you're hoping it's not the last mile. You're hoping it's like a couple of blocks. But even so, like your choices are ride in the right lane of like a 5 or 7 lane roadway where people are driving 45 or 50 miles an hour, or ride on like a curb tight sidewalk where you might have to dodge around bus stops and people walking, and like maybe you shouldn't be riding there at all because it's a safety hazard. So they kind of put you in a no-win situation when there are no connections to the places where you actually have to go. So yeah. Yeah, I mean, I definitely will not. I will ride on the sidewalk if I have to, and just try to be conscientious about the other people who are using the sidewalk around me. I will not submit myself to riding a bike in a place where people are driving 50 miles an hour.
And as I come back here to the question back here, I was riding my bike on the sidewalk right over here on 7th Avenue, because you cannot ride a bike on 7th Avenue. But I got hit by a car where it was pulling out because no one's looking for cyclists. And so it's a no-win situation, truly a no-win situation. I mean, I'm okay, clearly I'm here, but that was the only option, and people are pulling out constantly. So we need real protected bike lanes and real options for cyclists. So question right here.
Hi, my name's Joshua Polacek, big fan of CityNerd and of the work that y'all are doing locally. I'm actually up from Tucson. I'm waiting for, our stadium, the U of A stadium did get a really good bike nerd score, or city nerd score, so I'm waiting for him to visit in person. My question's even more nerdy though. In Tucson and up here in the valley, we have these regional transit authorities. And what we're seeing is the places that produce the money, the downtown cores, that money's being extracted and it's being used to build stroads in the suburbs. So that the people that don't live in our neighborhoods can get to our neighborhoods faster, more dangerously, and without having to pay the true cost in their taxes. Especially for the councilwoman, what do we do with these regional transit authorities? I know Mayor Rahina in Tucson, or Mayor Romero in Tucson, she's fighting to make sure that Tucson gets a fair share. What's happening up here in Phoenix?
I mean,
great question.
I'll speak first, but the other two folks up here probably have knowledge of regional issues. But I don't know, like if you watched, so I went to Houston last October, and the reason I went, it was kind of a similar situation. I got invited out. Hey, can you talk about this important issue, which was that they had a ballot measure. Well, it's kind of complicated to get into. So every metropolitan area over 50,000 has a metropolitan planning organization, right? And the board of the MPO makes decisions about how funding gets allocated across the region. And the makeup of the board of that MPO was just wildly disproportionate. They had like every suburb in Houston got like one representative. And then Houston itself, which is almost 2 million people, had like 3 representatives. There are like towns that have like 10,000 people that have one representative. And it just makes no sense at all. And it explains just about everything about how money gets spent in the Houston metro area. By the way, a book you didn't recommend, City Limits by Megan Kimball, which came out a couple months ago and talks about the freeway fights in Dallas, Houston, and Austin, is an awesome book. I recommend that one to everybody if you want to understand the politics around freeway boulevard. I can never say this word. Boulevardization of freeways is super interesting stuff. I talk about it a little bit in my recent Minneapolis video as well. But anyway, like for me, a lot of that comes back to maybe not even like I'm not sure how the transit authority and the MPO are set up. Sometimes they're housed in the same place. So maybe that's the case here. So maybe it really is the transit authority. But in a lot of cases, their hands are tied by what gets decided at the MPO level. So maybe that's the place to go look.
Jenn? Nicole? Yeah. Jenn? No? Okay. No one else wants to touch that with the 30-foot pole. No, that was a great question. Great question. Got you right here over here.
Hi, I just wanted, as I also am car free, I don't own one. The main thing is I want to echo our canal system. When I watched your Vegas videos, it reminded me a lot of our canal system here, which is fantastic. It really allows me to get around a lot. And then when you were talking about traffic ease neighborhoods, I live in Scottsdale, and so I'm an east-west commuter, and Oak Street is a wonderful thing, and so I would recommend, if you're looking for something that's kind of easy to ride on, Oak Street is a wonderful way to get back and forth in the valley, because it is low traffic. They've done art, murals and stuff like that in some of the alleys that you go through and things like that. So,
yeah, good, because I do, I'll definitely come back to the area at some point, because I haven't gotten to Scottsdale, I haven't gotten to Mesa at all, and so yeah, and I don't know, I'm New Mexico United right now, so it would be, yeah, right. I don't know if I'm invited.
We got a few more questions we got time for. Go ahead.
Hi. So my question is about, I guess, I don't want to deny that there's great work going on here in Phoenix. I'm a pretty recent transplant, been here about 2 years, and I'm very lucky to live right off of 3rd Street and to be able to just bike down that and go to work. It wasn't until months of writing it that I realized that was like a very new thing. And, it seems like a lot of the work that is going on is very recent and is very good and very needed. But I kind of have a hard time grappling with the long-term feasibility of urbanism or life in Phoenix generally. The jump from my first summer to my second summer here was terrible, and this one is gearing up to also be bad. And I think just long term, I have a hard time accepting that this is like a place that is incompatible with life, but people still live here somehow, and sort of how to, I don't know, just I was wondering like your general thoughts on that and on living in an urbanist way in a city that seems totally inhospitable to human life or to leaving your house for half the year, and just what you think about that.
Good question.
Should I answer? I don't know.
Yeah.
No, I just say like my first thought coming here in late June is, why the hell do 5 million or 6 million people live here? But again, the whole year isn't like this, right? Like when it's ridiculous in we praise Minneapolis all the time for whatever. Yeah, try living there in November, December, January, February. You would wish you were in Phoenix then. So I don't know. So that's my thought about that. I'm always kind of an annoyingly glass half full person, but I feel like I think it's easy at certain times to think, yeah, this is not livable, and we can't make it better, and it's not worth the effort. But I think a lot of the year you would sing a different tune. But I could be wrong. I'm not the one who lives here, so I kind of want the people who actually live here to answer this question.
Yeah. Give us some optimism, Jen.
Yeah, I was up in I shouldn't start with this. I was in Northern California along the coast. It's beautiful, right? You come home, this is a couple of weeks ago, I come home, and then I'm just like, WTF, why? I'm from Mesa. I've lived here all my life, but I travel extensively, and I'm like, what in the heck? And I told a friend, I don't know why I'm here. I'm at a point, after this council thing, I'm out of here. I am not doing another summer. And then I turned on the TV, and then I saw in Boston it was 95, and they didn't have air conditioning. And then I saw the fires going on north of LA and near San Francisco and some others and stuff like that. And you realize that climate disasters are happening across the United States and across the world. And there is no haven anymore. And if we stopped our CO2, our greenhouse emissions 100% right now, I hate to tell you this, it might slow things down, but it's too late to reverse it. So that's the down. Now, I don't want to be Debbie Downer, but I was reading a book. It's dedicated to Andres Duany, but the guy's name is too difficult for me to pronounce. But it was, preparing for a more difficult future. And it talks about this issue, and it talks about how we build our cities. And it gets really into adaptation villages, which is kind of like the idea of the 15-minute cities, and how we need to have those be very diverse and resilient, and having water sources, electric sources, and having courtyard type things that you know your neighbor and you have a community and things, and having the community garden and things like that. And I started sectioning off and looking at downtown and how we could do this, because that's the reality. Now, wherever you live, fortunately, we have just the heat. Life remains the same. A few people die. I get that. I don't want to discount that. But our environment, our homes pretty much are still there. And they're not flooded and they're not on fire in the Phoenix metropolitan area. But I think if we build and design our lives and our environment differently, we can be much more resilient. We got to get out of the suburbia thing. That does not work. People don't. The whole environment doesn't work. And so it is getting into this kind of village mentality and looking at all the resources you need. If you lost electricity, would you have some solar in that? Is there an urban garden? If your neighbor doesn't have air conditioning, what can you do? And looking at making your little nodes and adapting. I feel very strongly about that, because you know what? At this point in the world, there is no escape. And then I just okay, even though it's not in Northern California right now, we're not burning up, and I have air conditioning, so I'm making the best of where we are. Last thing, I'll just tag on to that. When Ryan Wozniak knows this, when we started our group, little community group, and I believe in Mesa's downtown, and we had a motto, and our motto was, Portland is for quitters. We made T-shirts and everything. We'd wear them to city events. This is before I was on council. We'd wear them to city events and stuff like that. And so what that meant to us is, if you want a place that's all that and put together, you can find these little places. Portland, this is in 2010, 11, 12. Go there. They figured out the biking and, and the urban planning and all this, and they're doing a great job. But if you want to make an impact with your life and make effective change that helps the world, stay where you are, do the work, and your life is, I think, more rewarding in a way where you can make a difference. So,
Nicole, you want to touch on that too?
Thank you. And I think there should be a support group for us, because oftentimes I feel the pain. I mean, we all do. To add on to what Councilwoman Duff was saying too, one of those, it can be a low-hanging fruit if it doesn't make our heads explode when we think about it, is having homes converted into grocery stores. If we could have walkable, if the zoning could be changed to where we could actually have grocery stores that are walkable, then we could actually maybe feel a little more comfortable in our environments, whether it's grocery stores or pharmacies. Those are the basic amenities I always think of. A lot of people think of coffee shops. That's great. But the things you think of that you have to go out and maybe bike to on a weekly or daily basis, it would be great if you only had to walk to them for just a few minutes. Like the 15-minute city, I was always skeptical of, only because in Phoenix we need like a 5-minute city in the summertime. But I mean, the concepts totally make sense. It's just that we have in our zoning where I think it can happen with folks like you and others if we just really push on council to reform the zoning to start making some of these things happen. It may not seem appealing to have a single-family home next to you with a grocery store, but they're actually very quiet. There's not a lot of hoopla that goes on at grocery stores. People just want to get in and out. So part of it is changing our mentality. And I'll be honest, when I first got into this, I didn't quite connect the dots of going from environmental, living out in the Maine woods to Phoenix. But part of it was, how do I protect nature and prevent sprawl? I got to live in the city. Okay, I don't like this city. How can I make it better? And it's really exhausting. That's why we need more folks really to help. And we need a support group too. So anyway, is this,
yep, I got it. I traded you there. All right, we got time for a few more questions. A lot of great questions. Go ahead.
So this is a general question, but
a lot of the online discourse for cycling, kind of in the vein of heat, is that it's too hot to cycle, and you see the same conversation against it's too cold to cycle, or the city is too hilly. But we have all the exceptions. We have Minneapolis, we have San Francisco. We have so many exceptions, but it seems that I haven't found a city that beats the exception for heat. Do you guys have any examples or any of your travels of a hot weather city that is an exceptional biking infrastructure, or that the city of Phoenix and the Valley as a whole can take an example of?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so caveat, which is that I was in Spain in like February, March, April, but Sevilla gets extremely hot in the summer. Not as hot as Phoenix, but it gets very, very hot and humid. And they have an amazing protected bike network in Sevilla. So that's the one that jumps to mind. It's inland. It's not coastal like Barcelona or Valencia, which both also have good bike networks. So that one definitely jumps to mind for me.
I was going to say something about, I spent a summer in Spain too, and the old style of building, they were wise about it. I wish we were wise now. And Cul-de-sac is kind of doing this in Tempe, where they're building their buildings close together, so no matter what time of day, you're creating shadow, and you can have shade there. I think we can do a lot in creating, because, no matter how hot it is, if you find shade, it feels bearable. And another comment about biking versus driving, they say, oh, it's so hot, you can't bike, 10 minutes there. I don't know, when I get in my car and it's 180 degrees, I don't stop sweating for like that 10 minutes. So I'm still sweating no matter what, so.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm going to go to Jamie here next, talk about bikes, but heat is not like one of the first top 3 reasons that I hear from people why they don't bike. It's, am I going to get hit by a car? Where am I going to park my bike? There's not good infrastructure in the city of Phoenix, at least, unlike other cities. We don't have any in downtown Phoenix real parking for bikes other than, right on the street where your bike seat's going to get super hot. But I think a lot of it is perception. People say, oh, it's like you said, it's that perception. But it can all be things that are fixed. Jamie.
Awesome. So this is going to be another bike question, but more of a fun one. I know Nicole's going to have a great answer for this one. A lot of people have trouble comprehending, like being able to carry cargo on a bike. So I'm curious, what is the largest item you guys carried on a bike before? I've done a couch. So.
What's the largest item you've carried on a bike? Anybody want to take that question, Ray?
Oh, gosh, I'm not a cargo biker, so mine isn't going to be very impressive. I think I brought home like a full-size bike pump once. I went to buy a bike pump, and I strapped it to like the little board on the back of my bike. That's probably it. Not very exciting.
Anybody, Nicole, you want to take that?
Yeah,
I got time for probably
so we
like
have
one
2
more
cargo
question.
bikes. Other than we have a front loader too. We brought here tonight. I've been wanting to line it and put water in it so we could just sit in there and take turns sloshing around. But I would say that the funniest thing, actually, to me, I don't know about with Abby and Derek, was when we first got the cargo bike 2 years ago, we shoved both of them in there, and all you could see is like arms and legs coming out, so we could go take them to the bike shop so they could get their bikes. And I still have those pictures, and I come across them, and I kind of snicker, but they didn't look too happy in there. But our groceries, so for a family of 4, we're able to get groceries once a week, loaded up. Derek's been doing the groceries every week, and he gets pretty creative. Before it was Abby, before her full-time job. So yeah, you can really shove a lot in there, and we drink a lot of sparkling water, so that's a lot of weight. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I want to turn it into a pool though sometime. Anyway.
That's awesome. All right, we got one more question from the audience, and then we're going to do a little concluding remarks. Don't forget, we have a 9 o'clock walk through Melrose. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, Brittany Hoffman, born and raised Phoenician. How important is signal prioritization for the train? And how do we get elected officials to understand if the train goes faster than the cars, the people will get in the train?
Woo woo. Great question. Ray, you want to take that first?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because this goes back to like just a lot of traffic engineering stuff. But when your intersections are the size of some of the ones that you have here, where you've got like 6 or 7 lanes meeting 6 or 7 lanes, the cycle lengths are super, super, super long. So like if you're a pedestrian, you have to wait a while to get a walk signal. You're kind of making the trains subservient to those signals. Like, so I compare in Portland, they've had policies for a while to that limit the cycle lengths to something like 80 seconds or something, 80, maybe 100. And I've seen signal cycles out here that are closer to like 3 minutes. And so it just makes it all the worse when there's no signal priority for the trains that I'm aware of. And so you could be sitting at a station for a significant amount of extra time waiting for the downstream signal to change. Yeah, I mean, besides it slowing down the trains and you know, it's bad advertising, right? They move slower than the traffic when they could be more competitive. But also it's just, I don't know, it's just massively disrespectful to the people who are choosing or have to ride the train. It's like, yeah, your time isn't worth as much as one person driving one car, right? Which is insane. Yeah. So yeah, I think we're on the same page on that. Like, I don't know how else to communicate that to elected officials, right? I mean, you're making decisions, or you have policies that are penalizing people who are often, you know, kind of doing the right thing, right? Or doing the thing that you hope people will do. And you're kind of rewarding people who are doing the opposite. So yeah, that's my transit signal priority stump speech, I guess.
That's a good one. Jen, you want to touch on that? And go ahead.
And I don't have a lot to say, but I would say traffic engineers in cities, staff, they're responsible for level of service, and that is level of service for cars, right? And the rail, that's a complete different system, and it's Valley Metro. So I think we should start a movement, that's all.
What would that movement look like, Jen? Yeah. All right. We can leave it at that.
So yeah,
Nicole, I know you've been working on this a lot.
Yeah. What's interesting, I stumbled upon a 2017 or 2018 article about this. Phoenix actually has what they call, it's even more state of the art than signal priorities, predictive signal priority, and we actually have that implemented into our system, but we fail to use it and we choose not to use it. So just a little fact there. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so it's there. Millions were spent on it, federal money, and why did they opt out? It could be partly from the previous streets directors. By the way, we have a great new streets director for City of Phoenix, Joe Brown. He's from Long Island, New York area. Former streets director Kenny Knudsen was extreme car brain as you could get. And very inconsiderate on a lot of things. But I think it was even before him, because before him was this Ray Dovalina, or I don't know, there's so many of them, but they were not prioritizing it and always had these really fascinating excuses. But that's just a little fact I wanted to share, because the more we know, like, then maybe we could start putting more pressure behind them, because they're still not choosing to act on that. And we have it millions of dollars implemented to do that, at least in Phoenix, so.
Hey guys, we have to wrap up. We're just out of time right now, but it is awesome to see so many people sold out here for CityNerd, coming out here. And I really appreciate all of you on a hot night like tonight. Hopefully our panelists can hang around if you want to have a chat, maybe get a photo with Ray or something like that. But before we wrap up, I want to give our panelists one last shot, to plug something. What are you working on next? What should people get involved with? How can people, get engaged with you? We're going to start with you first, Ray. And thank you so much, by the way, for being the impetus, for getting us together, for letting us watch your content. We love it. We appreciate you coming out here bearing the heat. How can we get involved? How can we support the work that you're doing, Ray?
Yeah, I don't need any support for the work I'm doing. I really, I don't know. Like I kind of, I've been doing these visits to cities for like over a year now, and I think a few months into it, I realized that I don't know. I'm kind of missing an opportunity to connect with the people who are actually working on local issues, because I talk about things very generally. Like I communicate ideas about planning and transportation engineering in a pretty general way. But every city has different issues, and so I wanted to be able to find a way to connect the people who watch and enjoy what I do and care about the same kinds of issues I care about, to find a way to connect them with the groups and the people who actually know what's going on locally and have been working on the biggest problems, and also really just to get together and meet other people who care about the same things that you care about. Like that, this is a good venue for that. So every city I've been going to for like the last 6 months, I've been trying to do an event like this and just kind of like subjecting myself to having selfies taken and stuff like that. Yeah, that's all fine. But I really enjoy it. People always ask me, like, isn't it exhausting? And it's not, because there's something about talking to people who care about the same things I care about that's actually a little bit energizing. I never feel exhausted at the end of these things. I always feel like, oh, well, I'm flattered, right, that people come out. That's one thing. That feels, it's an ego boost. But it's also, it really makes me feel good that, oh yeah, like, maybe I am impacting things in a positive way, that I can bring people together and get them connected locally.
You sure are, Ray. We appreciate you. The City Nerd. Absolutely. Jenn, I want to go to you, and then to Nicole. Plug something you're working on right now, maybe how people can help and get involved.
I think the biggest thing that I'm working on, hopefully we get a bond passed, but we'll get it done. The Center Street Connector and downtown Mesa from the canal system, taking it protected bike lane and streetscape and all that into downtown Mesa. I thought it was like no-brainer. Council is just going to be fine with this. I mean, come on, what other protected bike path could we do that had more economic return than going into our downtown instead of bypassing and going into Tempe? And yeah, there's pushback. And so we got some money on the bond, but it's unlabeled. Hopefully the bond goes through, but I am going to fight for that. So please, I might be calling on that. But I would say as a call, for people definitely live in Mesa. And thank you to Strong Towns, the guys who put it together. Oh my God. I was so excited when I saw that they formed, and I don't know how I got, and I was like the second or third person who signed up on Discord. I was just so thrilled. I was at CNU recently and ran into Chuck Marone. He was doing his, and I said, Mesa, Phoenix. He goes, oh yeah, I remember that. And then Jeff Speck had the same thing because he'd been here, and he was like, oh, wow, you guys know how to do suburbia really well. Good luck with that. Yeah, they weren't filling me with all this energy and enthusiasm, but having the movement here that understands our local issues and people who can dig into this and become part of that and follow all the great work. CityNerd, there's so many people to follow that are in urbanism, and understand it and be an educated voice in your community to fight for what you want. There are just so many people that I don't think it's out of ill will, it's just out of lack of knowledge. Our metropolitan area grew from the 70s. I know in Mesa we're 70,000 people in the 70s, right? Now we're 510, 14, 15,000. I don't know, something like that. Well over 500,000 people. So the expansion of our cities have been in the suburbia model. We don't know anything different. So anybody who has been here for a long time, which are often the people on councils and the head of boards and stuff like that, they're legacy people and families and stuff, they have no idea what another environment will be. Now, yeah, maybe they go to another city and they travel and such like that, but that's there. And that's for them. That's that. And that's not Phoenix. I travel a lot, and if I get a city I love cities, and I will walk and use transit and whatever I can just to see the city, and I'll go 10 miles in a day, sometimes just walking for 10 miles. If I ever told anybody in Mesa that I walked for 10 miles, they would say, oh my God, what happened? Did your car break down? Did you have a flat tire? Are you okay? It would be like the worst thing ever. No one walks in 10 miles in Mesa or in the Phoenix, in the metropolitan area. It's in a different environment. We're done with that. We're cities that have grown out, and now we're growing up. And we need to be smart about it and implement the urbanist principles and study up on it. There's great podcasts, YouTubes, books. There's get involved in Strongtown Phoenix or, the Phoenix, Urban Phoenix Project, sorry. I know you guys, and there's so many other, just get involved and be an educated voice in your community, and I think that's huge in how it can make a difference.
And Nicole, I know you always got multiple campaigns, issues, things you're fighting for. Please plug them, how people can get involved. And a huge thank you for bringing us together and being the impetus to bring us together today.
And I don't know where Kristen's at, but she's our vice chair for Urban Phoenix Project. She also helped put quite a bit of this together if she's around. Okay. Yeah. And one of the things I know that Strong Towns is working on and Urban Phoenix Project is telling people's stories. That's one of the things to humanize the experience, so we don't feel so, to put a story, but I gave you credit and kudos for the work that you did. Here's Kristen right here.
Thank you so much.
And we're trying to humanize the experience out here in Phoenix because, 43% of Phoenix itself, 43% of households, own 0 to 1 vehicle. And the average household is approximately 3 people. So that's a lot of people who may not have routine access to a vehicle. And nationwide, it's like 33% of people are unable to drive, whether it's their age, a disability, and something else maybe by choice, I don't know. But no, that wouldn't be part of the 33%. But anyways, there's a lot of people out there. We just don't take as much space up. That's why we need to vocalize our stories more. So I'm really happy that these guys, and Chuck back here too, not Chuck Marone, but the other Chuck, just as cool. But they're humanizing our experiences and stories. So I just want to encourage folks to get involved with Urban Phoenix Project and Phoenix Spokes, and then Urban Avenues on YouTube. This is Jamie, a local YouTuber and sketch. Also follow Tico Phoenix if you haven't on Instagram. A lot of good history on there as well. And I think that's it. And Ed, thank you too, very, very much. I'm glad you enjoyed doing this.
Jenn mentioned social infrastructure is just as important as the built infrastructure, guys. So get involved, meet each other, and work towards making this city, making this whole area better. Get involved in Urban Phoenix Project, get involved with Strong Towns, or start your own organization. Get involved in your neighborhood association and push these issues, and we can make things better, guys. Have a good night.